Hollywood's golden age promised eternity. Under the glow of studio spotlights, beauty was sculpted, voices immortalized, and dreams pressed into silver nitrate. The world saw grace and charm, perfection projected 24 times per second. But behind those polished smiles lived another Hollywood, one wrapped in silence, shadow, and pain. For every Oscar statuette, there was a broken heart. For every red carpet triumph, a night spent alone in a dressing room, wondering who you were once the cameras stopped. This is not the Hollywood of premieres and applause. This is the Hollywood of goodbyes, the stories the studio publicity men erased, the voices that were too fragile to keep performing. 10 stars. 10 lives that remind us how costly the illusion of immortality can be. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. 1. George Sanders, the philosopher who lost interest in life. He was the archetype of sophistication. The cynical wit of All About Eve, the debonair villain audiences loved to hate. George Sanders was never just acting. His world-weary eyes hinted at something truer. Off-screen, he wrote novels, debated philosophy, and spoke 5 languages. He believed intelligence was both armor and curse. As the glamour faded and his health declined, Sanders faced a world that no longer needed his kind of elegance. In 1972, alone in a Spanish hotel, he left a note that was both chilling and profound. "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored." It wasn't despair, exactly, it was exhaustion. The ultimate gesture of a man too lucid for illusion. Sanders' death set the tone for all that follows. Fame as a gilded cage, intellect as its own solitary cell. 2. Charles Boyer, the lover who couldn't survive love. To millions, Charles Boyer embodied continental romance, the accented gentleman who made Ingrid Bergman and Olivia de Havilland swoon on screen. Yet, the truest love of his life was his wife, actress Pat Patterson. For 40 years, they were inseparable, a Hollywood rarity. When Pat fell ill and died in 1978, Boyer's world ended with her heartbeat. 2 days later, he ended his own life with a handful of pills. The tabloids called it tragedy, he would have called it loyalty. His death wasn't an escape, but a reunion. In a town that sold fantasy, Boyer lived one of the few real romances, and could not live without it. 3. Gig Young, the Oscar winner consumed by his own mask. Gig Young's smile could sell anything, especially himself. He won the Academy Award for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Playing a man who entertained others while dying inside. The irony went unnoticed by the world, but not by him. Behind the charm lay alcoholism, financial ruin, and a desperate search for identity. In 1978, hours after marrying his 5th wife, Gig Young shot her, and then himself. Police found his Oscar on the mantel, gleaming like a mocking trophy. Hollywood made him a symbol of sophisticated despair. Reality made him a cautionary tale of what happens when the performance never ends. 4. Laird Krieger, the talent the studios tried to shrink. He was supposed to be the next Orson Welles, towering, eloquent, magnetic, but in 1940s Hollywood, success demanded conformity, and Krieger's size became his curse. Typecast as the villain, he longed to play romantic leads. Under studio pressure, he embarked on a brutal crash diet regimen. The transformation worked on camera. Off camera, it destroyed his heart. At 28, on the verge of stardom, Laird Krieger died after surgery to reduce his weight. His final film, Hangover Square, premiered weeks later. Audiences saw a man reborn. They didn't know the rebirth had killed him. The studio celebrated the picture, but barely mentioned the man. 5. Gail Russell, the beauty too shy for the spotlight. Gail Russell was the face of innocence in the 1940s, a fragile grace that seemed almost supernatural, but that fragility was real. Crippling stage fright and self-doubt drove her to rely on alcohol to calm her nerves. The more she drank, the shakier her career became. The shakier her career, the more she drank. A perfect Hollywood feedback loop. By the time she was 36, she was living alone in a small Los Angeles apartment. One night, she drank herself into unconsciousness and never woke again. The studio press release said only that she had passed peacefully. Peace was a luxury she'd never known while alive. 6. Inger Stevens, the actress who couldn't outrun isolation. Swedish-born Inger Stevens had the kind of ethereal presence casting directors adored. She starred opposite Clint Eastwood and Henry Fonda, always radiant, always poised. Yet her friends spoke of a loneliness she could not explain. Hollywood loved her beauty, but ignored her silence. In 1970, she was found in her kitchen after an overdose. The note she left was never made public. Perhaps there wasn't one that newspapers blamed, personal problems, but those who knew her whispered that success had isolated her from any real intimacy. In the city of endless parties, she was always alone at the center of the room. 7. Carol Landis, the star whose death was sanitized. Carol Landis was sunshine personified, a singer, a dancer, a pinup who entertained troops during World War II. Behind the camera, she struggled for serious roles and a sense of worth beyond her looks. Her affair with the married Rex Harrison ended in humiliation when he refused to leave his wife. In 1948, she took her own life. Harrison was the one who found her body, yet his name barely appeared in the papers. The studio's publicity men cleaned the scene before police arrived, turning tragedy into inconvenience. Carol Landis was buried beneath bouquets and silence, the kind Hollywood specializes in. 8. John Bowers, the forgotten inspiration for A Star is Born. Long before Judy Garland sang about rising stars and falling idols, there was John Bowers. He had been a matinee idol in 1920s, a man who embodied the early magic of silent film. Then came sound. His voice, fine for conversation, lacked the power the microphone demanded. Offers dwindled. His fortune vanished. In 1936, after hearing that his former lover, the actress Henry Garland, fictional name from your transcript, here kept symbolic, had found new fame, Bowers borrowed a small boat, sailed into the Pacific near Malibu, and never returned. His story inspired A Star is Born, but the movie offered the tidy tragedy audiences could digest. The real ending was lonelier, quieter, and without music. 9. The cast of The Conqueror, victims of an invisible enemy. Sometimes tragedy wears no face at all. In 1956, Howard Hughes produced The Conqueror, starring John Wayne and Susan Hayward. It was filmed near St. George, Utah, downwind from a Nevada nuclear testing site. Years later, nearly half the cast and crew developed cancer, including Wayne, Hayward, and director Dick Powell. The government dismissed any connection. The studio buried the location records. The desert sands had carried fallout, and the cameras had captured death in slow motion. The tragedy wasn't one person's despair, but an entire production poisoned by national secrecy. In a grim twist of irony, The Conqueror, a box office disaster, became a ghost story written in human bodies. 10. George Reeves, the Superman who couldn't be saved. To a generation of children, he was the embodiment of hope. Superman, smiling, indestructible. But George Reeves was trapped inside his cape. Casting directors refused to see him as anything else. Producers mocked his seriousness. In 1959, he was found dead from a gunshot wound in his Los Angeles home. Officially, suicide. Unofficially, the questions never stopped. The bullet's trajectory, the fingerprints, the missing gunpowder residue, all pieces of a puzzle that never quite fit. To this day, some believe he was murdered, others that the burden of perfection finally broke him. Either way, the hero the world adored died as one more man Hollywood couldn't save. 10 names, 10 different stories. Yet one pattern runs through them all, the industry's talent for erasing pain. Studios in the 1930s through the 1950s controlled not just contracts, but lives. Publicists sanitized suicides as heart attacks, arranged false alibis, and even staged photographs to prove their stars were happy. Image was currency, truth was expendable. The press played along because audiences demanded escape, not authenticity. No one wanted to know that the woman on the magazine cover had spent the night crying, or that the man grinning in his tuxedo was drowning in gin and debt. Hollywood sold perfection because perfection sells. And yet, hidden in studio archives and obituaries, the same refrain echoes. They were tired. They were lonely. They wanted peace. The deaths of these actors are not ancient history. They are a mirror held up to every age that confuses fame with fulfillment. Social media may have replaced studio press offices, but the illusion remains identical. Perform happiness, conceal pain. George Sanders' letter could have been written by any celebrity of any decade. I am leaving because I am bored. That boredom was not mere ennui. It was the despair of someone who had seen the machinery behind the fantasy and found nothing human left. The lesson is not that Hollywood kills. It is that any system built on image can starve the soul. When applause becomes oxygen, silence feels like suffocation. Today, retrospectives speak of these stars with nostalgia, sometimes even romanticizing their tragedies. But to truly honor them, we must strip away the myth. They were not archetypes or metaphors. They were human beings negotiating impossible expectations. George Reeves wanted to direct. Gail Russell wanted to paint. Laird Krieger wanted to be seen for more than his weight. Each desire was simple, and each was denied by an industry too invested in illusion to notice genuine longing. Their real legacy lies not in how they died, but in what they revealed. That behind every perfect performance is a person yearning to be enough without applause. As the camera pulls back on our imaginary montage, news clippings fading into black, the narrator's voice softens. The golden age of Hollywood gave the world beauty, laughter, and dreams. But beneath that golden glow lay the cost of keeping the lights on. Every frame of glamour was balanced on the quiet suffering of those told to smile a little longer. If this story teaches anything, it is that visibility is not the same as understanding. The camera can capture everything except truth. So, the next time we watch those shimmering old films, maybe we should watch differently, not just for the sparkle of youth or the perfection of choreography, but for the tremor beneath the voice, the fleeting glance that says, I am human, remember me that way. There were thousands more actors, crew members, writers, whose names never reached the marquee. Their stories, too, are part of Hollywood's hidden ledger of grief. The film reels decay, the headlines fade. But the questions remain. What is the cost of pretending forever? Who tends the broken lights once the audience goes home? In remembering them, we are asked to do what Hollywood rarely does, to look past perfection and honor the truth. Because glamour dies, humanity doesn't have to.